All right, fellow Latin scholars. Sorry that this is so late. Kind of haven't been doing my job recently. But today we're talking about indirect statement. We're going to use those infinitives that we learned on Tuesday to kind of make the indirect statement. So what is an indirect statement? An indirect statement is a clause that is found or used after verbs of meaning, like that mean to say, to think, to hear, to believe, or any aspect of that. In English, we usually use a noun clause. In Latin, we are going to use the infinitive and possibly a subject in the accusative. There is no separate clause in Latin. It's all one sentence. So we're going to figure out what that means and how it looks. So what exactly is an indirect statement? Well, if you've watched any of like the TV shows or court things or anything, it's like he said, she said. When somebody reports something, what somebody has done or something has done or said or thought or heard, that's an indirect statement. For example, let's say we have a regular statement, veniam, in Latin, I will come, right? It's a completely good sentence. If we wanted to change that into an indirect statement, we would say, I thought, I said, I heard that I would come, or he would come, or whoever would come, right? We're going to see how to put these together. We're going to see how they work, and then I'll have you guys on the assignment. You guys had to translate them and put English into their indirect statements as well. So this construction of indirect statement comes after certain verbs. Verbs of saying, like dico, nego, naro, scribo, nuntio, any of that. Verbs of knowing, like scio, respondo, cognosco. Any of those are verbs that could be used. Verbs of thinking, like credo or puto, and verbs of perceiving, like I heard something, or I saw something, or I know something, or I feel something, sentio, would be another one. So any of these verbs, you see it, you automatically should think of indirect statement. So when we're talking about translating indirect statement, we're going to have a verb. Our main verb is going to be of saying or telling or perceiving or whatever the list you just saw. It can be in any tense it wants to be in. And I think I didn't make this clear in the class. But you use the present infinitive when you want the action of the indirect statement to take place at the same time as the main verb. If you use the perfect infinitive if you want it to take before the main verb, and then you use the future infinitive to take place after the main action of the verb. Now, these could be any voice, could be active or passive, mostly going to be active because it really wouldn't make any sense if you used passive. It could, but it's a lot of hairiness to it. So when you're translating, if you want it to be present, and if the verb is, you want to have at the same time of the verb use is or was or were. That's if it's like imperfect or whatever. You could also use the perfect infinitive to say it's after or before, excuse me. And you would use have, has, or had. And if you wanted to take place after, you would usually use would, but you could also use will. So here's an example. Let's say we have an indirect statement. We have putamus, puellam, whatever. Putamus means we think. Puellam means the girl. So you have to kind of include the that. It doesn't have to be, but it makes more sense in Latin. So we think that the girl, if you want it to be at the same time, you use venire, which is coming. If you want it to be before, you use venisse, which means has come. Or if you want to use after, use the future infinitive, and that's when Toram. Remember, they have to agree with the accusative, which is in this case, or the subject of that statement, which in this case is the girl. Okay, so that's why it's am at the end of it, and that means will come. So you can see how the tense changes, even though that the main verb is present. Another example. Let's say we wanted to say, no, we just did that one. No, if we wanted to put in the past. This is an imperfect. Usually if you have a imperfect or perfect or pluperfect or whatever tense, you're usually going to have to put a passive, not a passive, a past tense type of tense to work with it. So, putabamus means we thought that the girl, puelam. Venire would still be present tense, but you would say was coming as opposed to is coming, because it has to, quote unquote, agree with that tense of the main verb. It has to happen at the same time. And that's why the have changes to a had with wouldn't say, and the will would change to would, because you technically don't know if it's going to happen in the future tense. Now, it's all well and good if you have, and all the sentences I use today did have an accusative subject for the indirect statement. So we thought blank was going blank, that kind of thing. Now, if you have the subject of the infinitive, that accusative is if it's the same subject of the main verb and it's third person, like he, she, it, you're going to use a certain word for that. So, for example, if we have dixit se ventorum esse, it has the same subject. He said that he would come. So you use an actual word for that. It's the word say. Okay? That says to me that you're going back to the subject. That say word. If the object of the infinitive is the same as the subject of the main verb, and it is third person, you also use a form of say. It's actually say, sibi, say. And in this case, you use sibi. So he is the subject of the first part, right? The main verb. Dixit. So he said we, nos, had persuaded him, sibi. So you're going back to that subject. That's when you use the form of say, when you're going back to the main subject of the verb. Now, another one, if you have aum or aam, basically when the subject or the object is different. So let's say we have we said, diximus, that she, aam, interfecam, esse, had been killed. Notice that is passive, and it is perfect passive. But you could also have, we said that aam, she, would kill them. That's when you use aos. So aam could be the subject or the object in either way. I didn't put any of those on the examples yet, but know that is a possibility. And a couple more. Some verbs are always followed by an accusative and a future infinitive because that's just the way they are. Mostly these verbs are things that you can hopefully have, like I hope one day to be a singer or something. I promise. Not everybody holds their promise. Or swearing, not somebody swears and doesn't follow through. Something, same thing with the threaten. It always is going to take a future. And there's an example. Saperbant se ventoris esse. They hoped that they would come. Final thing, don't ever use the non plus the main verb like deco, because that doesn't work. There is negative statement verbs. Like nego means I do not say or I deny. Here's an example. Negawit se ventorum esse. He said that he say would not come. And there's that not, so it's included in the verb. Okay? Just an FYI. So I have the assignment where you change English sentences to indirect, and then I have 3 sentences for you guys to translate, pretty easy ones for indirect statement. Okay?